call it the Lista.
Lista?
It's LCD. Okay. So I'm gonna go over here to the audio memos. We got that. I'm gonna show you this consent form.
Okay.
And ask if you can sign it. This gives me permission to like use this later. So it should be 2 pages.
That's his.
Yes.
That's me.
Yeah.
That's you.
I found out people had to sign. I was
yeah.
wondering if I was gonna have to teach them the language, the sign language. So let's get started. Alright, so I'm gonna have it like this going back and forth. So
Okay.
pretend it's a microphone. It is a microphone.
Oh yeah.
Okay. So what is your dance? Oh, before we start, start. Don't use your real name. Because of the IRB, I can't put your real name into this. People can't be able to
use my. Okay.
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 And that's the only rule.
That's weird because I don't go by my alias.
Okay. Will this be the first time? This could be like the
This is a
start.
return. Alright.
Okay. So this is Wally Brown here with the current president of the Georgia Textiles Club. So, what is your dance alias?
Wait, do I just. Okay. Jim Longer.
Jim Locker. So, why is your name Jim Locker?
When I got that name, I was into a style called locking, and I was trying to think of a funny or pun-based name that I could use, so that's what I came up with.
Are you aware of the crew Lost in the Gym?
I'm not.
Okay. I thought there might be an affiliation. Okay, so which crews do you represent?
I represent Concrete Samurais, Textiles, and from Sacramento, I represent Adrenaline Rush and Rhythm of Change.
So how long have you been here in Georgia?
I've been here since fall of 2012, around August. I came here for college, and before that I was in Sacramento, California.
Were you born in Sacramento?
Yes.
Did you grow up watching Even Stevens?
No.
Oh, that took place in Sacramento. Alright. So, why do you dance?
Well, originally it was just to look cool, but after a while, it was more about the community. Like, I grew up as a multiracial person, so I didn't have a specific ethnic group that I could identify myself with or like had a community around. And I participated in dance community. I throw events, and a lot of that is all because it's nice to find people who are like me.
So, through dance, have you found a lot of like-minded people?
Yeah, I think so. That's like why I joined the crews that I joined.
Would you say that dance like helped give you an identity?
Definitely, yeah. I think it's like been really helpful in that aspect, like my adolescence and my early adulthood.
So, do you think that you got to like create your own identity, or like was it given to you through the dance?
A little of both. I think in some respect, it's like, you know, what are you aesthetically naturally drawn towards? That kind of helps identify how you'll dance. So you don't always have control over that. But in terms of like, you know, maybe you decide to study a non-hip hop or non-street dance form, like, or even just movement form, like a martial art, and that can inform your style. So a lot of people are really into like capoeira or like kung fu, and that informs how they dance, and you can tell that is part of who they are, and so that becomes part of their identity. But I think for me, a lot of it was based on environment, and then what I found myself drawn towards, not so much me saying like, oh, I'm gonna do this, but that was usually after like subliminal hooks had gotten into me, like saying like, oh, I want to do this dance style. I want to dance like this.
So, how long have you been dancing?
I've been dancing since winter 2010, so about almost 6 years now.
Is that a special winter?
Not really. I just happened to have a friend who had was going to dance classes at a studio, and they just happened to have hired someone who's from the real street community. So that was basically like my gateway into the community through a studio.
What was your teacher's name?
His name is Mikey Joaquin. He currently he used to be part of the Jabberwockies tour company, and now he lives in Australia.
Dang. That's cool. What style of dance did you do?
So he started off with like breaking, I think, and then he did some time working in different choreo crews. But eventually decided to study more, mostly locking, which is what kind of brought me into it.
Jim Lockup.
Yeah, and then he left to join the Jabberwockies, and when he left, he was sort of like the only person from the community who was doing that style, and because I was a student, I was sort of forced into that position, not necessarily by my own will, but like it was sort of like natural for me to fill that position, and that was really interesting because like he was so much more mature, like older than me, just as like his age was, he was older than me, but also like he was a more experienced dancer and more mature like artist than I was at the time. So it was interesting.
So you fulfilled the role of teacher once he left?
Kind of. I think like within my high school and like the people I danced with, I became the person who taught locking, but I was still aware of other people in the community who were teaching locking, but it wasn't really anybody who was like much more experienced than me. It was mostly people who had learned from the same people I had learned from, or the people who taught, my teacher. So it was never really like I was the only guy, but it was also because it wasn't exactly popular. But with the people who knew me and the people who danced with me, whenever they wanted to learn locking, they would come to me. So that was pretty cool.
So do you ever go back to your community?
Yeah, I try to go back as often as I can. Like anytime I have a break or time off from school, I go home. And I think that like it's really cool to have been from a place and then I wasn't as impactful in the community there just because it was so much bigger and more mature than I was at the time, and to leave and come back in different stages of my growth over the past 4 or 5 years has been really cool, just because like I feel like I'm new but I'm still old like to the community. So there's certain people who have joined the community, who've joined the become a part of the community more recently, who don't really know me, and then a lot of people who have been there for a long time who do know me, and it's kind of interesting because like it's like home but it's still new, so it's pretty cool.
So when you were coming up in Sacramento, where did you all practice dance?
So it was kind of weird. So like the studio that I was talking about, they have a competitive team, Adrenaline Rush, which is I joined that after a year of taking classes there, and so they had like a studio, a pretty legit place to practice. But then aside from that, I was also part of 2 other crews. One was at my high school called Rhythm of Change, and we practiced just sort of in like a next to the gymnasium room that had mirrors. It was called the dance room, but it wasn't really made for our club because there were a lot of like bureaucratic reasons we couldn't use the room for like, you needed to have a 21 or older coach present to just in case something went wrong, or like a teacher needed to be there the whole time, which was really hard to get to happen because it was a public high school, and a lot of the teachers were already very busy.
Pressed for time.
Yeah, they weren't. Yeah, they didn't have a wealth of time. So
were they open to other dance styles using the room, like ballet and modern?
Well, we had a drill team which had gotten national level placings in recent years, and I think as far as I know they're still at that So they obviously got priority over us, but we tried to, schedule around their times, and it would still be, we faced with red tape. So a lot of times, if we couldn't get in the room, we would just practice outside. If it was raining, we'd practice under the awnings in the hallways or whatever. So we would sort of just do whatever we needed to do because a lot of times it just wasn't available. And then aside from that, I was also part of another crew in my last year of high school called Academy of Thugs. And
Real thugging.
not really.
Yo, it's thugging.
It's pretty anti-thug actually. We practiced in a church. We had, I guess, a rental agreement with the multi-purpose room of some church that was based in like a strip mall type thing, like a little shopping center, and that was having some pretty hard times. And this is like 2010, 2011, 2012 is still not quite recovering from the economic crisis. So, there were a lot of areas, and that area in particular was not well equipped to handle like an economic downturn. So a lot of the spaces around the church were empty, and it was really interesting, like just to see there's a church and then we're just like practicing there. It was kind of weird, but it was a nice place. We had like a nice hardwood floor, and it was generally clean, and we could pretty much always go there if we needed to. So yeah, that was like our home base for a long time.
When you came back here, when you came here to Georgia, where did you practice initially?
So Textiles, the club that I'm the head of right now, they started off when I got here. They were practicing in the Canvas Rec Center, so that was sort of the main place to practice. And I guess it was. I mean, it's like a gym, and the problem with that building, that place, is that they don't allow us to use the in-building speaker system, which are like really nice speakers, but for some reason clubs aren't allowed to use them. Only people who pay to host and attend classes there at the gym, like aerobics classes or yoga classes, are allowed to use those systems. So only instructors of like an actual class, not clubs just renting out or just using the space. Because we got the space for free, but on top of that problem, it tends to be overbooked. So, but starting out, that was the main place, and like that was where they practiced that whole year, my freshman year.
Who was the president before you?
This guy named Scott Knudsen. He was not really part of the community. I think he inherited the club from a time where it was a little bit more established, and he hadn't really made the same like community connections that the previous presidents had. So it was kind of weird. Like, he didn't really make an effort to host events with the club. Didn't really make much of an effort to go to do any performances as a part of the club. So mostly what he did was just schedule practices, from what I know. Yeah, and that was pretty much where we practiced when we first started out here.
So when did you become the president of the club?
So I was elected my second semester here, and because Scott was graduating.
You were still a freshman.
Yeah, but because of the way it worked, it was like, that was like a transitionary semester, so I wasn't in charge of that semester. I was just like elected to be the next president. So that started my sophomore year. I was like acting president.
Dang. So when you became president, what were some of your like goals for the club?
I think generally the first goal is to do some sort of event that would be more like community centric. I mean, they hadn't really been doing events, but the history of the club has a lot of pretty important events in its lineage, and I wasn't really aware of that until after I started throwing events here. But like, in addition to just like throwing events, I wanted to see like more educated and less people sort of just showing up and messing around and then sort of leaving or socializing and leaving. It didn't really seem like it was a real club. It was like you had people who were part of the gymnastics club and they came and they did like what we call power moves. They were doing those and teaching other people how to do them, but they mostly stayed within their own little clique, and new people weren't really offered a lot of resources or help with getting started unless you explicitly asked for it, which is a hard thing for a lot of people to do. Definitely recognizing like I come from a studio background, I wouldn't have been able to do that if I just showed up and seen people doing crazy things that I don't know how to do and trying to ask them for help. So yeah, one of the reasons why I wanted to host events is because one of the guys from Academy of Thugs who had graduated high school and went to University of Washington in Seattle, he was instrumental in hosting and bringing some people from Sacramento out to Reign Supreme, and this was in 2013. So when I saw that he did that, he wasn't the sole person behind it, and they had like a club, a lot of infrastructure behind them that allowed them to do that. But I thought, why can't I do that? So that was sort of the first thing that motivated me to actually put effort towards making an event here.
Yeah. So what was your first major event here?
The first thing we did was called the Summit, and it was kind of a weird thing. Basically, I had been in contact with people from the beatboxing club since fall of my freshman year.
Buzz Beats.
Yeah, and they've been always like a really cool ally for us because we tend to perform at the same events. So some of our first performances, some of the first performances that I was involved with, we would go and they would just happen to be there, and it was a pretty low-key performance, so we just decided to say, why don't you guys we'll do our routine and then you guys do your thing, and then we can have you guys beatbox, and then we'll have like a little dance beatbox combination for a little bit, because our what we do is complementary to each other. So we decided to throw an event that would involve a beatbox battle and then also a dance battle. And we also found another club that was here called the Georgia Tech Electronic Music Collective.